Hey there, guys. Great to have you here. Welcome to the Holy Shed. I hope that you've had a great weekend, maybe still having it. We've had a wonderful week. We had a good pal from San Francisco with us, Elizabeth, who is a priest and a farmer, as you can see. She was due to be in Israel, Palestine, on a trip that we went on 5 years ago when I left St. Luke's. It's called A Taste of Palestine. Elizabeth, as you can see, grows wheat. She grows heirloom wheat, actually, only the best, and I'd need her here to entirely explain that to you. But she was due to meet some farmers and bread makers over there in Palestine. Sadly, of course, that wasn't to be, so she stayed with us, and we had a lot of fun. We spent our evenings, really and truly, watching all the series of Strike. So good. She hadn't even heard of Strike, but I think she's probably going through withdrawal now back in San Francisco. And we went to the theatre with her to see Noel Coward's Private Lives. And since she couldn't be on the West Bank, we had a meal in a lovely Palestinian restaurant in West London. And we also went to meet some amazing bread makers here in this country and enjoyed, as a consequence, some pretty fabulous heavenly bread. So it's great to have you, Elizabeth, and we're sending you lots of love and missing you already. Now, I've never forgotten my first Satnav. How about you? Mine was a Garmin, and I loved it. I mean, it wasn't infallible, like all Satnavs. It led us up some blind alleys, like country lanes that fizzled out and were too narrow to turn around in. But at the time, it seemed like magic, telling the sat-nav where you wanted to be, and then it got you there. It just about ended, maybe not entirely, but it just about ended navigational arguments in our car about, which way to go, which route to take. And that's back in the days, of course, of map books and handwritten instructions and the like. But I still do altercate, I have to confess, as I always have, with sat-navs quite often. Of course you would, I'm sure Pat would say, because you always know best. Well, in fairness, I have spent a lifetime driving the length and breadth of this country, preaching and giving talks and the like all over the place. I think I've got a pretty good sense of direction. And hey, I also managed to find my way to places before algorithms were even a thing. But yes, of course, Pat's right. I have had to eat humble pie on many occasions when really I should have stuck with the sat-nav route and I didn't. But the great thing is, the forbearing sat-nav never gives up on me. Speaking of which, what I loved about the old Garmin that I had was that whenever I did take a wrong turn or I ignored the directions, this nice lady's voice would calmly say, "Recalculating," and then immediately offer me another route from where I was then. Well, without wishing to sound too much like the vicar in Gavin and Stacey, that voice in my sat-nav reminds me of God. Not to mention offering a handy little lesson in process theology. I mean, look, just like the Garmin lady, God never judges or condemns us when we take wrong turns or screw up. God doesn't force or coerce us into submission. Instead, God, like the sat-nav, offers us the best possible choice at that particular and every particular moment, which links back to the divine lure thing that I've been, harping on about. That persuasive prompting of God's Spirit, which in effect says, okay, here's the best possible choice you can make right now. But if we ignore it and, maybe get in trouble, then recalculating based on our last choice and where we now find ourselves, there's another best choice that we can now make. And there, my friends, is process theology right there. Like the Garmin lady, God relentlessly calls and invites us to make the best choice that we can make just now, given where we're at. Remember what I said a couple of sheds ago? God works with the world as it is in order to bring it to where it can be. Well, I think it's just the same on a personal level. God works with us where we are in order to bring us to where we can be. It's pretty good, isn't it? And I'm not talking about, a master controller, that big guy in the sky at his heavenly desk, sending down instructions. This is God's will. No, I'm talking about a relational God within a relational universe. God along with us, interacting with us, and all that's going on around about us. God as part of the process that we are going through. In biblical terms, we're talking about the Spirit leading us into all truth. Remember, Jesus said that he would send us the Spirit, and the Spirit would lead us into all truth, guiding us toward the best version of ourselves that we can be in this very moment or within this situation. And when we get it wrong, there's no condemnation, no guilt trips with God. I don't believe in a God of guilt trips. But within the kaleidoscope of possibilities that life presents, both good and bad, God's Spirit constantly draws and invites us to make what you might call optimal choices, even when we're lost. It's called grace, by the way. And God never forces or coerces us into it. We're just free to choose. And whichever way we do choose, even bad choices, God will still be there with us. The parable of the prodigal son is, I would say, the New Testament paradigm of this. The scandalous grace of the father who doesn't intercept to stop his son making a massive mistake, though reading between the lines, as all good interpreters do, I don't doubt that there were conversations about that before the son left. But then he took off, and the father waited, looking out for his son. He didn't send out, his kind of forces to go and grab the son, kidnap him and bring him back, something like that. No, he was just patiently, lovingly, yearningly looking out for his son, ready and waiting to welcome and embrace him when he returned. And I'm quite sure that the alluring love of his dad called the prodigal in the far off land to make a better choice, to get up, leave the pig swill, leave the path that he was on, and rediscover the right way. But how does all this work in practice? How do we sense the calling or the luring of the Spirit? Well, to answer this, we need to return to the whole business of how we imagine or picture God. Because look, this is very, very, very important. I've said before, the only real issue, the only true issue in the whole world of theology is how do we picture God? The rest of it is wonderful window dressing rather, but that's the important thing, because the notion of God that we carry around inside is the crucial determinant of our lives. It's the determinant of the sort of spirituality that we will live by. And I'm not talking about, the doctrine or theory that we have about God. That's all up here. But the sense of God that we carry deep down, that we carry with us and that we live by, that we experience, that, friends, is what determines the sort of spirituality, the kind of religion that we have in practice. Far, far too often, I have encountered, counseled and prayed with good Christian folk who may affirm all the right words about God, a God of grace, when you ask them, but who actually live with, and you have to listen. That's part of the process of counselling and supporting people, is to listen to not just what they're saying, but what is their experience of God within. And very often they live with an inner experience of a God who's judgmental, who's always looking on critically, nitpicking, finding fault, controlling us through fear and guilt. Well, guys, this is not the God of Jesus Christ. In my childhood home, back in Liverpool, we used to have a text. It was a really old-fashioned. I wish I had it now. It was one of those really old-fashioned texts on the wall of our house from Deuteronomy, which simply said, "Underneath are the everlasting arms." It's probably my most enduring impression of God gently embedded in me from my childhood in a subconscious process. And it gives me a sense of God holding and supporting me come what may. Arms in which, for me, are always fiercely maternal. I often say that my mother taught me everything I know about God that really matters, which is not a pile of words and theology. It's unconditional love. That's the only thing that's really important to know about God. And it is, when we receive it and believe it, utterly life transforming. So my own sense of God in practice is of an all pervading, loving presence, which is constant, sustaining, mostly undetected and unnoticed, but always there. Like the oxygen in the atmosphere, or the process of breathing, which is crucial to life, obviously, but mostly passes unseen, unobserved. So against this background of God, I see prayer as a form of mindfulness, a form of connection, okay? A deliberate or intentional openness and connection with divinity, the divinity which surrounds me, surrounds us all. Prayer, I think, is an inner posture, okay? It's not the sort of what we do on the outside. It's an inner posture of pausing to become awake, more aware of the very heart of life itself, which is God. And that doesn't mean contemplating some religious kind of figure, some icon or whatever. I'm talking about whatever it is that we're looking at wherever we are, whether we're looking at people, milling around and going down the street, or looking at a lovely bird on our bird table, or looking at, trees or a mountain, or whatever it is that we're looking at. Prayer is an inner posture of pausing to become more awake to, more aware of the very heart of that thing that we're looking at, which is God. And, that's really also a pretty fair definition of what mindfulness really means. And its most basic, prayer isn't saying prayers. I mean, that's wonderful and important. I write prayers all the time, and I say them, and that's fine. But really, prayer is becoming sensitive to that inner presence, to what the Quakers call that of God in everyone, which doesn't need to be conceptualized in religious language. People with no rational concept of or belief in God can still be praying, albeit unconsciously and intuitively. When for instance, they sigh, "Thank goodness," with relief, or when they moan, "Oh Jesus," in distress, or when they "Wow," with wonder, or cry "Yes" in gratitude. Every longing of the human heart for goodness, every sense of gratitude or satisfaction with life's goodness, every intuition of beauty or love is itself a prayer of some sort, no words required. So understood in this way, I believe prayer is ubiquitous or universal. It's almost synonymous with being human. It goes way back, and I want to talk about this sometime, but children from a very early age learn about prayer, It's something that's kind of quite basic in there. Whoever or wherever people are in the world, they pray, in quotes, at some point in some time. They sense or open themselves to or cry out to God by whatever name or no name. Similarly, people respond to the lure of God without necessarily having any belief in or awareness of God. When they respond to the need of a stranger or a friend, when they join others in seeking the common good or pursue justice for individuals or for communities, when they stand for what is right, or when they create something beautiful, when they're kind to people or to animals, or, you catch my drift, don't you? I'm talking about a religion of the heart, not of an institution. The lure of God is the inner longing for goodness, for love and compassion, for justice, for beauty, for life. And none of these qualities are mere nouns, even though in English language they may be. None of them are really nouns, objects or things. They're verbs. They are actions and energies. And when we pray or do good or align ourselves with what is right in life, we send out energy into the world, into the ether, if you like. We send out energy to people or situations that we are focusing on, that we've become mindful of in a specific way. And this is why I pray, whether formally, informally, or through my instincts or through my actions. This is why I do it, to send forth the divine energy from within, which then God can use, can weave into the warp and weft of divine purpose in the world, which is pretty exciting, isn't it? Now, I know there will be people out there who will be getting themselves into a right old lather if they're listening to me at all. They'll be thinking, but you're not talking about Jesus and the cross and atonement and resurrection. Well, actually, I am. I am talking about all of those things, but in a different way. See, when I look at Jesus, I don't see what Walter Wink rather wonderfully called an omnipotent God in a mansuit. I mean, that would have been cheating, wouldn't it, anyway? No, I see a person who looked for God at the center of his life, someone fully open to the Spirit, incarnating or revealing God in real and genuine human experience. And the cross is the paradigm. And incidentally, what I'd say is that Jesus is the paradigm or the exemplar, the model of what it means to be a human being fully connected with, fully open to God, who he responded to as Father. And the cross is the paradigm or the exemplar of God utterly immersed in the pain and suffering of the world, as God always is. The cross is God enduring, as God always does, the deepest depth of injustice and hatred that people ever undergo. And yet, still out of all of that, crying, forgive them. And through that love, we're invited to become at one with God. It's an allurement. The cross is itself the ultimate allurement that draws us into oneness with God. And that's what atonement is, at one-ment. And the resurrection is the glorious proclamation that death cannot kill love, that God's love indeed endures, outlives all that is hateful, unjust, and despicable. Christ is risen is also the declaration that love wins. For me, the cross and the resurrection declare loud and clear that God is not a noun, a thing up there, out there. God is a verb, a process, a constant coming into being. I will be what I will be. So do you know what? We also are not nouns. We are not fixed objects or static entities. We too are verbs. Life is open to us. The future is open. We're in a process of becoming. And therefore, I'm not a fixed entity that I was 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. I am in a process of constant becoming. So now it's for us to open ourselves deliberately and intentionally, moment by moment, to this God of love who surrounds us and holds us, who calls, prompts, and lures us toward the life in all its fullness which Jesus spoke of and promised and demonstrated himself. And there it is. All I can say is go do it, Floyd, because that's what being a follower of Jesus is really all about. Following him in being a human being. The Son of Man is what he called himself. 80 times actually in the Gospels. It's the thing he referred to himself more than anything else. The human being, the modeler, the exemplar, the embodiment of what it means to be a human being utterly connected to and open to the energies of God in any given moment. So that's what I see this thing is really all about. And how exciting is that? So I've got a prayer now, which isn't to do particularly with what I've been saying, though maybe it is. It's a prayer for, with the situation in Israel, Palestine and Gaza in mind. Loving God, in you there is no Judaism, Christianity or Islam, only different paths to love. In you there is neither Israeli nor Palestinian, neither Russian, Ukrainian or citizen of the UK, only humans, born with beautiful diversities of lineage, language, culture and skin colour. In you we find our place in the multitudinous family of creation, blood relatives of all, alien to none. May the religion and practice of friendship and love prosper in our hearts and throughout the world at this time and always. Amen. Indeed. So if you've got a drink, I happen to have the remains of a cup of tea with me. So if you've got a drink, whatever it is, I'd like you to take it in your hand and join me now in a toast. I propose a toast to peacemakers, offspring of God indeed. May they flourish around the world and especially just now in Israel, Palestine. A toast to Satnavs. May they always remind us of the unchanging, unflinching love of God that never gives up on us, but always opens up fresh opportunities for us to grow and progress. A toast and a prayer for all who are struggling to find their way or who fear what may lie ahead. To life, l'chaim. Amen. And in that, I would include in that final part of the toast, to those who are struggling to find their way. I include all those of you, dear Shadsters, who may be struggling at this time. And then especially I'm aware of Sue, who's facing some tough stuff at the moment and may have a bit of a difficult week, facing scary stuff. And I pray for you, Sue, and hold you in the arms and the arms of love. Underneath are the everlasting arms. Go well. Fantastic. Well, if you like what I'm doing here in the Holy Shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. It's very simple. You just follow the link which is on your screen now, and you can choose whether to buy us a coffee or two or whatever. We are very grateful to all of you who do this and who support us in lots of other ways as well. All very much appreciated. So there we are. I think that's just about it for now. And I hope that you have a great week. We will carry on with these things next time. But meanwhile, open yourself to the energies and the, beckonings of the Spirit of God, which are all around us in the world. Be kind to those you meet. Be kind to the world. Be kind to yourself. Hear the loving, never-ending God of love in your own heart. And stay human. I'll see you soon. I'm going to finish with the blessing that I've had recently. I like it because it speaks of the shalom and the salam of God. God is not contained or owned by any religious tradition or any ethnicity. God is the God of us all. I'll see you soon.